From 89.7 WUWM, this is Lake Effect. I'm Joy Powers. Today we'll look at the historic flooding from this past weekend and hear how weather officials are reacting. We'll talk to one resident who is dealing with the aftermath of a flooded basement.
It's like a storm was in here. Like things floated to weird places. Our carpeting, I think, floated off of the ground. And I don't think it's connected to the ground anymore.
Plus, talk with the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District about the pressure this storm put on our water systems.
So here we are Saturday morning thinking over the next 2 days we're going to have just over an inch of rain. As it turned out, it was 12 times or 14 times that.
All of that is coming up on Lake Effect. But first, here are today's headlines. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Joy Powers, and thank you so much for joining us. Today's show is all about this past weekend's 1,000-year flood. The National Weather Service is calling this the second worst in Milwaukee history, with more than a foot of rain falling in some areas in less than 24 hours. We'll hear first today from Tim Halbach, the warning coordination meteorologist for the Milwaukee National Weather Service office. He joins WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez to talk about how this storm developed and just how serious things got.
We right away got the pictures from outside of the Brewers Stadium and State Fair, but we do get a lot of reports of there's a lot of standing water here and there. We weren't getting a whole lot of information about everywhere else. How bad was this? Like, were we getting road washout or swift water rescues? So we're going through that. We had staff members that worked all night and worked a lot of extra hours and then came in early also to help out. So going into Sunday, the State Emergency Operations Center was opening in Madison. So I ended up going into there. And from there was a lot of briefings for the local emergency personnel, the emergency management, fire chiefs, police chiefs, because they wanted to know how bad the rivers were. A lot of people were they're concerned that there's going to be something like what happened in Texas whenever you get a flood like this now. So trying to kind of calm people that it wasn't going to be like a wall of water occurring and things like that, but that here's the situation and what we're seeing out there and how much worse it's going to get.
You brought up the initial event. I mean, I'm sure this is a question that you've heard a lot. I've seen it on your social media. We're getting it on our social media. And that's, why didn't we see this coming? What happened here?
I also, myself, I was working Alpine Valley for the Thomas Rhett concert. I was helping Walworth County Sheriff there with giving updates. And one of the challenges was just the forecast models that we were using. We're having a really hard time picking up on exactly where the storms were going to go. There were some forecast models that were showing absolutely nothing going through. And then we had some other ones that were showing more of this late evening storms developing along kind of a west-east boundary and just continuously reforming for multiple hours. So the situation we were in on Saturday, I was trying to figure out, all right, which models are initializing the best and which ones can we go with? So we had a flood watch that had been out from the previous day. And as the system started to show itself, we had adjusted that and got a flood watch out for the rest of southeastern Wisconsin. And then things went down pretty quickly after that. But any of these times where we get a flood event, a lot of times it's a local area that gets focused on somewhere within the general area of where we're forecasting the rainfall to occur.
That night, actually, we went to a friend's party, and I think there was calls for some light storms or some light rain. And then the sky had started to do some really wild things. And then it was just downpouring. As I was refreshing the radar and what was coming in, what I kept seeing is that the storm system would push forward. And then as the new kind of models would come in, it would almost repeat. It would look like it was just kind of like I hit the reverse button. What did you guys see? How did you make sense of the radar for lay people who are just trying to make sense of where is this storm going and why isn't it moving out of our area?
One of the things that we keep a close tabs on in the summertime for looking for heavy rainfall situations is looking for something we call the low-level jet. So it's something that's a few thousand feet above the ground. It's this wind that develops in the evening and overnight hours that where the leading edge of it sets up can be a focus for heavy rainfall to occur. So it's kind of different from a normal like summertime squall line where you get this line of storms and it's out ahead of a cold front and it sweeps from west to east and it's out really quickly.
I think that was kind of like what maybe we were expecting or what.
Yeah, which makes it difficult to really pin down because, it's easy when you see a line and then you're just, all right, well, that's going to come through at this time and this time and this time. When stuff keeps redeveloping like that, it's a little bit more uncertain about like, well, is it going to stop? Is it going to push off? So when something like that is in place, that's how you get this continual regeneration of more and more storms over the same area. And with Saturday night into Sunday, that feature didn't really move at all and was still there all the way through the morning hours on Sunday. So that's why we had so many of these different levels of rain instead of a line of storms coming through and then it clearing out.
And with the rain, I mean, I think something that a lot of people have heard is it referred to as a 1,000-year flood. Can you just put into context how historical of the storm and flood this was?
This is the second highest rainfall amount recorded in a 24-hour period for Milwaukee. So the number one day actually happened to be my 7th birthday. I grew up in Fond du Lac, and I happened to be at the Milwaukee County Zoo August 6, 1986. And that day they had over 7 inches of rainfall in Milwaukee. And all I remember as a kid was we were at the zoo and it was just pouring all day. So it was a great day for that. But then driving home, trying to go through the Marquette interchange, and there was water billowing out of the overpass and like kind of like similar to what a lot of people saw outside AmFam Stadium and at State Fair, where it's just the water just came up because it was concrete. There was nowhere for it to go. So this will be one of the top ever rainfall events that occurs here in Milwaukee area. We do kind of caution about using the term 1,000-year flood because people get the idea that, well, we had this flood, that means like it's going to be another 1,000 years until it happens. But the way that it's used in the hydro community is more of a 0.1% chance of it happening on a yearly basis. So we only have records that go back so far to know exactly how much rainfall like this or how frequent this happens. But something like this is extremely rare to have it happen and to produce that much rainfall.
Mm-hmm. And kind of like you were saying, like there's been an event like this even in your lifetime. And I know you're not 1,000 years old, but also we've had multiple 500-year floods. Even this kind of like language, does it still apply with a changing climate?
Just knowing that we have rainfalls like this, we've had other situations, even as recent as I think 2010, we had the Shorewoods Rapids where there were reports of 7 inches of rainfall occurring in 2 hours, and the Upper East Side turned into basically a river going down Oakland Ave. So there's situations like that. It's just a matter of, how often does that happen? And it's something, unfortunately, that, we have to be prepared for, that you get a heavy rainfall event in the Milwaukee area and it's going to cause issues like that pretty quickly.
Can we talk about that, preparing? Because as we're saying, we're seeing a lot more of these pretty historic events, more rain, more flooding, more destruction across southeast Wisconsin and Milwaukee. How can people prepare for it sounds like, unfortunately, becoming more common and on the way?
The last 2 big floods we've had, so this one and then the Dane County, Madison area flood from 2018, when the rainfall rates are this high, even people that are meaning well have issues because the water just comes up around them and there's not much that they can do. So in a situation like that, it's try to wait it out, wait for the waters to recede before you go and do something, or just try to find higher ground. The biggest way that we've seen people drown from these situations is that they drive through a flooded area. If it's more moving water, we saw a lot of just standing water from this event. I think that's probably why we didn't see more potential drownings or anything. I think the local DPW and the highways did a really good job of getting signage out to say, hey, there's flooded roadways here, don't drive through this area. So the biggest thing is just not going through the low spots, and particularly at night, because that is when a lot of these heavy rainfall events occur, is just being aware if you're driving through a low area, be careful, because you might see water going over what looks like the top of the roadway, but underneath it, the culvert can be washed out. There might not be a road there. So if you drive into something like that, you're at the mercy of the river or any of the moving water that's going through there as well. Another part of what happened on Saturday that I don't know if it's getting as much attention was a couple got struck by lightning while they were hiking out in Jefferson County as well. These storms were prolific lightning producers as well. So it's kind of a myth that like getting struck by lightning is a very rare thing that can occur. But we've done a lot of kind of outreach to make people aware, like if there's a thunderstorm, the safest spot is to be inside. Sometimes you can get caught off guard if, you do go out for a hike. You might be further in on the trail and it might take a little bit longer to get back, but just do your best to try to avoid being outside when lightning is occurring. The general rule is if you can hear thunder, you're close enough to get struck by lightning.
So I'm in audio and also admittedly love a good storm. I didn't realize how severe everything was when it was happening, but I brought up my recorder and I started recording the storm. And it was some of the loudest thunder that I had ever heard in my life. Does this tell us anything about the storm?
When we're looking at these storms, one of the things that, particularly for Saturday night, was just how prolific of rain producers they were as well. Because the clouds were so warm, we had a lot of warm air that was going up through the top. In other situations, if it's colder in the top part of the thunderstorm, you might get a little bit more in the terms of hail that makes it down. But when you get such big storms with so many raindrops and all that, it can produce these electrical charges. And the more lightning you have, the more intense the storm is going to be. So we look at that as a kind of a sign that like, oh, this is pretty serious when you're getting that volume of lightning, or just that you're getting a lot of rainfall. There are different types of lightning. There's negative strikes, there's positive strikes, and then there's in-cloud flashes that we look at. The positive strikes are typically the longer lasting, house rumbling, multi-second thunders that you hear, whereas the negative strikes are typically more frequent and maybe not as intense, but you can get a lot more of those. So in that situation, we just had so much lightning that was happening that I think that's partly what you were hearing there, Jimmy.
Tim Holbach is the warning coordination meteorologist for the Milwaukee National Weather Service office. He spoke with Lake Effect's Jimmy Gutierrez. There are countless stories from Milwaukee area residents about what unfolded in the early morning hours of Sunday, as waters quickly rose and many basements filled with water. Here's Wauwatosa resident Jessica Young sharing her experience with WUWM's Eric Vaughn Fellow Maria Peralta Ariano.
We actually came back from vacation Saturday afternoon and knew that there were storms we were in Door County, right? So we knew it was coming this way. We probably went to sleep around midnight. In the middle of the night, I saw there were flash flood warnings, but there always are, and during some storms in the summer. And I know that the Menominee River had flooded like maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, but they, put extra ponds and other things in place to help it from overflowing. But I didn't realize that the flash flood was like, unprecedented, check your basement. So we woke up at about 6:30, and we have a multi-level house, and the ground level had about 2.5 or 3 feet of water in it. And my son, he's 3, he came up the stairs. He was excited, like he thought it was a pool. And I was floored because I opened the blinds and, couldn't see like the cars across the street, the water was halfway up the cars. I couldn't see my plants outside. Half of the basketball hoop was covered. It was like that happens in movies or in other states on the news, you know. And then we have a glass window right by our door. It was like waves were crashing up against it all day. So that was crazy. But it was like our gauge of if the water was rising. And then it's, you know, do you panic or what do you do? I don't even know. I called my sister and she's like, oh, call 911. I totally forgot that was a thing. And they told me that, you know, the firefighters were in the area responding to other houses, and just to like not go in the water and to call back if the water was rising, right? And so it was so strange I could see where I live, you know, the parkway, the river is like west of me, and there's maybe 3 roads in different directions to the east of me, and I could see a block up that there was dry land. And so tons of neighbors and people were just standing out there, but there was no way we could open any of our doors or even do anything. Plus the electricity was on, which was amazing. We were very lucky, but that's scary because I don't know what's going to happen. And so we saw a couple of boats going by with people with life jackets and dogs. I could see Menominee River Parkway that the water was moving south, you know, like that it was fast. It was going fast. So at least I knew there was movement to some extent. Most of my neighbors live in ranch, you know, 1-level houses. So it was definitely more of an issue for them where they had to get out. Granted, it was fine. They were all going out and getting all of the 1-level houses, you know. So I kept seeing neighbors getting taken away to the dry land. The water wasn't rising, but, you know, you kept seeing storms are coming. And I was freaking out because you're in shock mode of like, what do I do here? Do we stay in our house because everything's working? But I don't want it to be like the middle of the night. We wake up and when my husband woke me up, I was like, oh, just get the shop vac. You know, I thought it was like a little bit got through the bottom cracks of the doors. And I couldn't believe it. And I'm so glad that I don't even know if it was firefighters, rescuers, all the people, there were police, that they knew what to do because we're just not an area that has lots of flooding. And so I was a little bit nervous that the people who had to rescue us maybe wouldn't know what to do because it's crazy. I was trying to look stuff up and keep my son calm. And then, some of our neighbors were kayaking around, checking on each other, which it just brought me to tears. It's so sweet. And then a boat came for us and we kind of just talked to them through the window. We had been packing for like various scenarios of like, is this going to get fixed soon? And do we have to go to a hotel? Let's pack some luggage or take what we just came back from vacation on. Or like, are we going to have to go out the window in a boat? And what do we need to take with us? And it was surreal. Like I still am in shock. I think I only cried for the first time a little bit a few minutes ago. And then, we went in a boat and they rowed us out or walked us out. I think the water was like waist deep. So it wasn't moving too fast, but they walked us out to dry land and then they drove us up the hill and then the firefighters were there. And there was like, you know, an ambulance and just all sorts of helpers and streets were blocked and people were everywhere. It was every single place there was dry land. There were people bicycling around, checking things out. As we were riding away on the boat, all of our neighbors were waving at us like we were celebrities. It was just a really sweet moment of, you know, just connection of like, hey, we'll see you soon when the water's down and then you can come back to your house. And then we got out and luckily I had someone to pick us up so we could rent a car and go to a hotel. And it started raining right before we got in the car. It was crazy. So we didn't even know what damage was done or how much was in the basement or, you know, I don't know. It's wild. It's still crazy. I don't understand it.
So from the time that, you know, you guys realized that your basement was flooding to the point of evacuation via boat, how long were you guys in the house and kind of watching the water and making sure that things didn't go any further than what it already had?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got up about 6:30 a.m. and so we're on our top floor and we came to the main floor and our ground floor, which is just like the entryway and kind of like the mud room to go to the backyard was already flooded. So we couldn't even get down to see that the basement was flooding. Like we had no clue because we went to bed around midnight. Like we had no clue any water was coming in anywhere. We didn't hear the sump pump overworking or anything before we went to bed. So it was just there and we couldn't see anything. That was about 6:30. And then the boat maybe came around 11-ish. I mean, it's so surreal to have your house flooded, but like we made some coffee and tried to eat some breakfast, but I could not swallow anything. I was sick to my stomach. And then, watching other people get taken away. And we took some pictures we had a couple stairs going down into the entryway so we could check and see if it was rising. And there was a point a couple of hours in where it did go up a step. But then by the time we left the house, which was about 11-ish, the water had gone down a step. So it was going up from like 6 to 9 a.m. maybe, and then already coming down by 11. And the parkway in front of my house wasn't flooded, and the water had fully receded from my house by like 7:30 p.m., which is just unbelievable to me. So whatever they did and however things work, I mean, the amount of water that was here to not be at my house in less than 24 hours is absolutely wild.
For sure, yeah. So what did coming home look like? Were you guys inspecting the damage? What was the damage looking like?
Oh my gosh, we just did that. Like I'm at my house now. We had our insurance adjuster here. It's so weird because like we had some planted pots that barely moved. We had these like light up little lighters to light the trail to our house, or the sidewalk to our house, that were laying in the garden and hadn't moved, but they were cheap plastic. We don't know where our garbage can is. The recycling bin had floated halfway down the block, and then as it receded, it came right back into our driveway somehow. So that was crazy. And then like 2 feet up on our house is wet. Our cars are totaled. One of them is brand new. So when we moved here, like there's a lot next to our house that was always in the flood zone. And so like the city bought that lot, and then our house is like right outside of it. So like we were advised we don't need to get flood insurance. So we don't have any. And so luckily, I think they said the cars will be covered, but like nothing in the house is going to be. It's like a storm was in here. Like things floated to weird places. Our carpeting, I think, floated off of the ground, and like I don't think it's connected to the ground anymore. There were like toys and things from the backyard and the front yard. It kind of feels like a tornado on the inside, right? Like there's weird boxes that I don't know where they came from that are sitting here. One shoe is randomly over here, and there's garbage everywhere and like mud. There's like kind of like a silt everywhere. And then the basement is, I don't know what the right word is, but totaled. Like part of the basement had like that corkboard ceiling, and I could see looking down the stairs that it had completely like caved in. It's our storage space. Like we have a little playroom for my son, and all I saw was cardboard from something that's all over the floor, broken up. We had a refrigerator down there, and it toppled over, and it broke our water heater, which is leaking. Both of our dryer and washing machine, which are also new, must have been floating around because they're both sit over on their sides. Our furnace, which is, about the age that maybe you need to get a new one, but that's totaled. We can't even get to it because of the amount of stuff that floated around it. And so it's completely blocked for anyone to do or fix anything. So it's maybe the third time in like the 15 years I've been with my husband that I've seen him cry, like hard, because we were already putting some of my son's childhood stuff, stuff that he still plays with because he's a kid, but on the curb. It's a huge blessing. The city's going to be picking up stuff off the curb this week, so that's amazing. But, like, we're throwing away so many things. We're safe, and that's really what's important. But it's been very, very emotional. My office is, I don't know, it's my first floor. I never thought anything would be an issue. So, like, my dad's ashes were in it. Like, I don't know how contained that is or if the water got in it. Photos, family things. Maybe it was stupid, but I was working in my our safe, and I put some documents away, left it open. And so like all of our birth certificates, all the licenses, marriage licenses, and important things that we have are all ruined.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry to hear about everything that has been
Yeah.
damaged or has to be thrown out now, or, just straight up ruined. Um,
Thank you.
so I really am sorry to hear that. So after you guys are done assessing everything, do you guys have a game plan of where to go from here?
Yeah. It's literally moment by moment. So it's crazy because I've probably called 10 like water removal because we didn't know if we had water, and the water is gone in the basement, but didn't know if we needed that. Like water removal and like mitigation companies. And there was a couple where like the voicemail was full. There was a couple I had to leave messages. There were a couple of larger companies that I've called, at like 6 a.m, and they haven't gotten back to me because they're busy. They have, and that's what I heard. A couple people that I was able to get a hold of, like, she said there's like 1,000 clients in front of me. And so they can't even call me back for 72 hours to then let me know when they could possibly come. I know they're doing their best, but it's insane. It's insane. We went to Target last night to try to get some things to like make some normalcy for my son while we're living out of the hotel. And you could hear everybody in Target, like everyone I was next to, they were talking about, oh, there weren't any dehumidifiers. Okay, well, we got to get some shoes for the day because all of our stuff was ruined. Or like everyone was there for that is what it felt like. And in the meantime, I have friends who maybe just had some little damage in their basement, and which is still horrible and rough to deal with, but like dehumidifiers aren't available. Fans are sold out. Sump pumps, the shop vacs are sold out, like everywhere. So like I have a friend of mine whose mom lives in Beaver Dam who's going to get me a dehumidifier and bring it down. Like luckily we have people who can lend us stuff, and I have seen some really great, like there's a Buy Nothing, like BUY Nothing Wauwatosa group, and I've seen a bunch of strangers posting like, what can I do? How can I help? List what you need that was ruined, and maybe people in this group can replace it. We'll walk your dog or pick up your groceries if you need. Neighbors have come by. Like neighbors at every house near me right now are the ones who weren't as affected, are like cleaning out their cars or doing things. And I almost feel like I'm not doing enough, but I think it's because our damage is so bad that we have to wait for the special mitigator to come in for it even to be livable. Like our main level and upper level are fine, but the internet is out. So we don't have, which is our air conditioning is connected to the internet. The electricity on the, we probably shouldn't have it on. And so that's as much as we just learned, that basically we shouldn't be living in our house right now until the mitigation is done. And the insurance adjuster was saying that it might be a week or more of work from the mitigation team only after we talk to them. And the fact that we haven't even been able to get a hold of anybody to talk makes me feel like no one's going to even get to our house for the next few days. So I think the goal is I'm going to go get some boots, gloves, masks, like Pine Sol, buckets, Swiffer, sweat jets, to be able to do as much as I can with some of the people in my life who have volunteered to like take the stuff out of the basement and put it on the curb. So it's scheduling out the cleaners and the helpers, and then also picking up supplies, and then getting back to my husband who's at the hotel and he's going to be working, and trying to discuss who we're going to live with come tomorrow.
That was Wauwatosa resident Jessica Young sharing her experience during this past weekend's flooding with WUWM Eric Von Fellow, Maria Peralta Ariano. If you have questions about the flooding, WUWM is here to help. Submit your question at WUWM.com, and we'll tailor our coverage to your needs. More to come on the flooding this hour. In about 10 minutes, we'll hear from some community members who jumped into action to help out neighbors as waters rose in Milwaukee. But first, we'll learn how the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District dealt with the overwhelming downpours and how the system held up. That's coming up next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. You're listening to Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. The historic levels of rain put a lot of pressure on the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District over the weekend. MMSD ordered a combined sewer overflow on Saturday evening to try and reduce the risk of wastewater backup in basements. Overflow releases happen a couple of times a year, but Executive Director Kevin Schaefer says in his nearly 30 years at MMSD, he had never seen this much water impact the system that keeps our sewers draining. Schaefer joins WUWM environmental reporter Susan Bentz to share how the system kicked into gear during the flooding.
Overall, I think the system provided as good a service as it could have during a 1,000-year storm from what we're hearing this was. And we've had damage at different locations around the region from the storm. But Jones Island, South Shore, we were able to keep treatment going at those facilities. The tunnel filled up very quickly, actually, in the storm itself. And, now we're just trying to pump it down as fast as we can and be ready for the next storm. But there'll be some repairs. There's damage we're going to have to fix. But, it did continue functioning. And Jones Island really did a great job. The Jones Island Water Reclamation Facility really did a great job of keeping up with the flow that was coming to it. But there was just water everywhere.
And South Shore, it was tough at South Shore?
We have a large metropolitan interceptor sewer that delivers flow to South Shore. And we have gates at the headworks of South Shore so that we can regulate flow going into the plant. Well, the water came in so fast, it hit that structure that has the gates in it, and the gates were kind of closed to a point because there was too much flow going through the plant. We didn't want to wash the bugs out. The water behind that gate jumped 30 feet over a wall that then sent that water into the headworks of the plant. And this is a safety feature that was designed into the system itself, into the treatment plant, to really try to protect the plant from being washed away. And that worked the way it was supposed to. But in my 28 years at MMSD, I've never seen that happen before. So this was something new. And that water then went through the treatment plant, but we were able to control how it went around the plant and tried to save as much of the biology as we could.
So just to dig into the infrastructure a little bit, just describe briefly, if you could, the storm management infrastructure, that system, how the deep tunnel fits into that, and when that overflow mechanism has to be used.
So you really have to kind of go through the history of how the system was built. And in 1925, Jones Island came online, and in the 1960s, the South Shore Treatment Plant came online. And in coordination with those two treatment plants coming on, we built regional sewers that collected flow from all the municipalities in the region. So these are called metropolitan interceptor sewers. And they collect the flow from Fox Point, City of Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, and they take that flow either to Jones Island plant or South Shore plant. Those sewers are roughly 30 to 50 feet deep. Well, when we built the deep tunnel, we put it in as an overflow prevention device, and it is about 300 feet deep. And so what happens is, on a dry, normal day, we're just taking all that flow to the treatment plants through the MIS, Metropolitan Interceptor Sewers, and treating that flow. On a rainy day, whether it's in the combined sewer system or the separate sewer system, we get rainwater that enters those pipes. And as that water gets deeper and deeper in those regional sewers that are 30 to 50 feet deep, we've installed weir walls so that the water will flow over that wall, drop through a drop structure, and go into the deep tunnel. And the tunnel is 526 million gallons of storage. And so we take that water out of the regional sewers. Those sewers are still delivering water to the treatment plants, but any excess water goes through these drop shafts into the deep tunnel. As that tunnel starts to fill up, we turn on deep water pumps that we have at Jones Island Water Reclamation Facility, and we pump that water out of the deep tunnel through the treatment plant and then treat it, meet effluent permits, and put it back into the lake. If the storm is large enough that inflow keeps coming into the tunnel faster than what we can pump it out. And that's when the tunnel starts to fill up. Mm-hmm. And I think it was at 9:55 on Saturday night, I ordered a combined sewer overflow to occur. And the reason we do that is if we let the system get totally filled, starts backing up, it could cause problems for people's basements. So we want to try to minimize that impact as much as we can to people's basements. And so we'll discharge this mostly stormwater. It's mostly stormwater at this point. We discharge that water into the area rivers and try to relieve the system so that we don't have basement backups.
Just to clarify, and this is not your job to deliver our drinking water to homes, but do people have to worry about the water coming through their taps?
No. During a storm like this, the drinking water utility does an excellent job, whether it's the city or Oak Creek or North Shore, the three drinking water utilities that we have in the region. They do an excellent job of treating the drinking water. So in all of my years, we've always had safe drinking water here in the region, and we're very fortunate to have Lake Michigan. And that's why we don't want to have overflows from our system, because we want to protect Lake Michigan because it is our drinking water supply.
You mentioned this earlier, Kevin, that I think in your 28-year tenure, you haven't seen a storm like this. So obviously this storm is stacking up to be much bigger than anything we've seen in recent history.
It is. Up until this past weekend, the storm that we've always heard was the storm of record was 1986. Mm-hmm. That's when County Stadium flooded, and that whole area flooded mm-hmm. in the valley. When this storm hit Saturday night, Sunday morning, I thought we might be getting close to that. I still haven't heard officially, but from what I'm understanding, we think this is the second largest storm that we've had in this region since records were started to be taken. So wow. 1986 is still the worst, but this one's right up there. It's worse than the 2009, 2010 storms, which is the ones that I did live through.
Yes.
But the storm is much bigger. But we were much better prepared for the storm than we were in 2009, 2010. Between the flood management work that we've been able to implement over the last 15, 20 years, the green infrastructure, although a lot of that was underwater for this storm, that did help in some capacity to keep water out of the system. The inflow and infiltration work that we're doing to keep water from leaking into the separate sewers in the region. So we have a lot of programs that really reduced the impact. We did not have any deaths that I know of from the storm. And I think the flooding occurred in areas, and it's terrible. It's not something we want to happen. But I think the extent of the river flooding was much less than it would have been if we'd not had those projects in place.
Mm-hmm. So does MMSD have the capacity to anticipate an overflow situation? And if so, does that make a difference? Does anticipation help at all?
Anticipation helps if we have it. So every morning we have a weather service that provides a weather forecast for us. And I printed out the one that we received Saturday morning from this company. And so this is how we start preparing for a storm. We'll get these reports, and it's actually a 7-day forecast, so I can see what the next 7-day at least expected rainfall is. Mm-hmm. And on Saturday morning at 6:22 a.m. when these came through, they were expecting 0.4 of an inch of rain on Saturday, and the worst case would have been just over 1 inch. And then on Sunday, they were expecting another 0.66 inches. So here we are Saturday morning thinking over the next 2 days we're going to have just over an inch of rain. As it turned out, it was 12 times or 14 times that. This storm should be a wake-up call for all of us. I mean, it's going to happen again. It may be another 25, 30 years. I don't know. But we need to make sure that we prioritize good stormwater management and good flood management, and we need partners to help us with that. And we need to, find the funding to pay for this work, because we have a heavily developed area. It's a lot of asphalt and concrete. The water's going to flow off of those areas, and we need to have a place for that water to go that's not causing a basement backup or flooding. So anything we can do, we're working on the Kinnickinnick River right now. Anything we can do to accelerate the Kinnickinnick River is vitally important for that urban southwest side of Milwaukee and the region. We've got work going on, construction work right now on the Menominee River, which will help to continue to help that project move forward. But we really need people to pull together and say, this is what we hope for in the future, and let's pull together and try to get it done.
Kevin Schaefer is the executive director of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Sewerage District. He spoke with WUWM environmental reporter Susan Bentz. Still to come, we'll hear from some Milwaukee residents who saw their neighbors in need and found ways to help. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Joy Powers. Despite the devastation left in the wake of the historic flooding, stories of hope have emerged. Neighbors jumped into action to help pump water from basements, clean up damaged homes, put furniture on the curb, and offer support to their neighbors in need. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez spoke to a couple Milwaukeeans who showed up for their neighbors in need.
Well, my name is Aziz. I'm a Milwaukee resident, and we just helping our neighbors. We just got hit with a major flood, so.
What when did you know things were bad in Milwaukee from your neighbors and from the community? And then how did you get activated?
I think everybody woke up yesterday on social media and could see somebody posting a video of just a devastating reaction to a significant amount of water being in people's basements and coming up to their first floors. And fortunately for us, we live in the Harambe area. Our house didn't flood. So I just came up in a world where if other people are being impacted by somebody who are close to you, you should figure out a way to try to help them and get active. So, yeah, I think it's just that spiritual calling of knowing that you got to help people when you in a position where you can.
Tell me about the process of like figuring out how to learn to do what to do, because now you're running things out here on the job site. But we were talking like you just picked all this stuff up yesterday. So how did you learn and how did you kind of like stumble through that?
Yeah, I think we all learned together. So like I was headed to my brother-in-law's house who had gotten flooded, because we were, checking on the people that were closest to us first. And as I was driving there, I seen a woman who had a ton of water. Seemed like she seemed like she had it figured out on how to get it out of her house. And her neighbors, they were in a pretty well-organized community on the border of Glendale. So, these are families that already have the means and maybe had even the equipment in the house. So I just got out the car and asked her, I said, what y'all using? So I saw what she was using it. I posted it or took a picture of it. Then I asked ChatGPT, I said, what is this? And where do I get one? And it's a water transfer pump is what it's called. And they basically use them to take water out of pools, especially if you get the right one. So we just learned, this is what we need. And then we ran into the barrier of there's none in the city of Milwaukee. So then we kind of had to troubleshoot around that.
Talk to me a little bit about where you were when you were, because it feels like it was, like I said, a long day. So tell me how long it was, and then what was the reaction from people when you actually did help them out with their homes, when no one was coming to help them?
I think the reality is like, neighbors showing up for neighbors is a significant opportunity to kind of change the narrative of the city of Milwaukee. We're on the north side in an area who was recently on the news 2 weeks ago because a young man was, running from the police and ended up, crashing his car and unfortunately losing his life. I think people like, us out here, some of these people, I've showed up on job sites, I don't know half the people out there doing work, but I just know they're there to help. So we just showing up for one another. So I think that's the beauty and the silver lining of the situation is, we can all show up. And I think people are super grateful. So I'm grateful to be a blessing to others and for us to even have the capacity and be in a position to help.
Talk to me a little bit about a house that you went to yesterday and then a homeowner or someone that was like, oh my goodness, thank you that you're here. Like, I had no idea what to do. Like, did you have that experience yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, we hit houses where it was 7 feet of water in the basement. And so I think when we pulled up, that's an overwhelming situation. So when we pulled up, there was a mom and a son yesterday, and the kids are outside playing. So they're a little bit of, they're living in a blissful environment, but the mom is stressed. And, she opens up her doors to a group of guys that she don't know, so there's trust that we had to get built instantaneously. And then we go in and we kind of assess the situation, just let her know what we're getting ready to do. And then once it gets started and gets flowing, I mean, one of my guys drove down from Eau Claire, had 3 kids. She made them a pizza. You know what I mean? It just, after a while, it's like we know new people in the city of Milwaukee. So I think, we show up on the site, we assess the situation like in any other environment, and then we get to work. And for her, she just consistently said, I'm super grateful for you all. And, she showed it through her actions, too.
That's incredible. And then, so yesterday you were doing all that. Today you're back at it. Tell me about the nonstop nature of what you're doing.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you can probably hear in the background, the water pump is already pumping and starting to move. Yesterday was an exhaustive list of families that we got because we just been posting on social media. We're not charging anybody. We're doing this for free. So, we're reaching those who are most vulnerable. We also made a lot of calls out for people to check on neighbors who are elders and maybe physically living with a disability, just because we know everybody's not going to post on social media. So we just did as much as we could in that capacity. And then, again, today, now we're dealing with like overflown backyards. So like this feels like a Louisiana, environment where you would normally have a boat, but we're just in a backyard in an urban environment. So, we're doing the work, and the calls and messages are going to keep coming, and we're going to get to it one at a time. We try not to overwhelm ourselves, and we try to be responsive as possible to the people that we can, especially those who are most vulnerable.
I know what I'm experiencing, but what about the rest of the world? And a part of me just felt like somebody's out kicking it on Water Street. Somebody's sleeping in their bed. When they wake up in the morning, they'll be devastated. I was awoke when it happened. And so I got to social media, started putting out the post, and I got a call from my pastor around 7 in the morning saying, hey, church is canceled. Now for me, church is a full work day. And so my body was already ready to work. I went to the first drain I saw, an area that I knew had flooded in the past. I think it was 35th and Center. I'm unclogging the drain and said, there's other people that care about this community. If I record it and show them what to do and tell them to use what they have, I can't get everywhere, but we can create some type of step-by-step process. Next thing you know, we're in homes, pumping out water to 2 a.m., and crews just keep showing up. Shantae Nelson sent some guys that were certified contractors. We couldn't get the sub pumps going for like an hour and a half, and they came in, you need a shorter hose. You need this piece, you need that piece. Now we're seeing water rushing everywhere. And it just energized me. The fellas was out there with me. Their parents was proud. Like, hey, we see you guys on the news. And for them, it was good to see the community that loves them instead of the community that judges them. I walk in and people are like, oh, FEMA's here. Like, we're not FEMA. We just some brothers from Milwaukee. And so they were happy to see us. It was like a family reunion. We didn't see despair. We saw hope. People welcomed us into their homes, but the neighbors was like, can y'all come to us? Can you do us next? We like, absolutely. And so when we went from home to home, we assessed the situation. If we had a home that was 5 feet high, I had the boots. Some of us did, some didn't. We would go down into the water. People started calling me. So I'm like, at this point, if this is what you need and you need for me to keep going, I'm going to keep going. It's bigger than me. So yeah, I would say 10 o'clock p.m. I was ready to be done. Midnight, I was ready to be done. Went to bed around 2:30, woke back up at 6 a.m. So it's been quite a day.
That was Montreal and Aziz, 2 Milwaukeeans who have been helping out their neighbors recovering from the floods. They spoke with WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez. And that wraps up today's show. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Joy Powers. If you missed any of Lake Effect this week, you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take the show on the go, you can download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Milwaukee is facing a housing shortage. Could so-called granny flats be a solution? Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll learn about them and how building them could help with the housing stock. Plus, you might know him best as Dwight Schrute. Tomorrow, comedian Rainn Wilson joins us to talk about his upcoming performance in Milwaukee and his Wisconsin heritage. Thanks so much for joining us right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR.